Hi, I'm Kim. I'm a licensed and nationally certified East Asian medical provider and a Taoist practitioner. Today, I wanted to talk about the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm looking at the translation by Eknath Easwaran, and I'm looking at chapter 3. And I'm not really sure what it is that I wanted to share with you, but it was just that this seemed really important right now because I know that there is a lot going on in this world and that there's a level of frustration right now with the older generation because they don't seem to get it. They don't seem to understand that for someone that's not going to die within the next 2 to 5 years, some of the things that we've done on this planet, some of the ways that we're behaving are really scary and really unsettling. And it would, for me, it would kind of be tough being a teenager today because it doesn't feel like this older generation really appreciates the level of unrest that they're bringing into the hearts and minds of younger people who have to stay, who would like to stay on this planet longer, who would like to experience love, would like to experience a family, would like to experience all those things that that older generation got to experience. And yet there's a subtle fear that that might not be possible. So I spend a lot of time reading ancient texts, and within each one of them is this interesting dialogue of how you become your best self. You know, how do you interact with other people in order to become your best self? There was one chapter that I was listening to, and it was chapter 3, which is selfless action. And I listened to it, and then I listened to it again, and then I read it a few times because each time I read it, I saw more and more unique and different aspects of this chapter. And not only do these chapters, or not only do these amazing works help me make myself better, but it also helps me understand people around me better and where they are and how, and it helps me understand my own morality because there is a lot of pressure on us today to follow the status quo, to follow this level of materialism and selfishness. And there's things that happen in this world that almost feels like they're forcing you to be that kind of person, because if you're not, you're just going to get run over or something like that. And the thing is when I read these texts, it kind of helps reground myself and helps me find my center again, because this decade, it's a rough decade because we are going through some huge societal changes. There are huge macroeconomic issues that are happening right now that are going to change how we interact in the world. And there's this desire from some people to, keep the status quo. And there's this desire from other people that things have to change. And, I think the one that's going to win out is that things have to change, because the reality is the macroeconomics of this is that this older generation that right now they're starting to pass. And this generation has hung on to power for something like 40 years. They have hung on to that power and they haven't shared it with anybody. So the question becomes, what do you do in the meantime? Because there's a lot of pressure to fall into line, to become that materialistic person, to become that self-absorbed, selfish person. And I would just suggest that maybe read any of these texts, because any one of them is going to give you this really amazing and really interesting information. And each one of them is going to help you kind of position where you are in this world, position where you are versus other people, to more quickly see other people. But it also helps you understand that everybody is going through a process, and that everybody's process is going to be different. And instead of making people right or wrong, you can look at this and really understand that maybe this is what's supposed to be happening right now, because we are going through a massive change, and any massive change has a lot of discordance, lack of harmony. So let me tell you a little bit about this chapter and why I liked it so much. The title for chapter 3 in Sanskrit is Karma Yoga, and that it is the way of action. For Arjuna, apparently, Lord Krishna thinks his life is the way of action, yet that is not the only way that you can get to your own self-actualization. That's one way. There is another way, and that's the way of wisdom, where you spend your journey on a spiritual quest. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a balance of the two to get to self-actualization. There's 6 different schools of traditional philosophical thought in India, and one of them is called Sankhya. And in Sankhya, there's 3 different levels. The top level, Sattva, is about goodness, it's about light, it's about purity. Then there's Raja, which is about passion, activity, and energy. And then there's Tamas, which is darkness, ignorance, and inertia. So when you're looking at those 3 different levels, you probably figured out that the first level is going to be Tamas, which is darkness, ignorance, and inertia. And then the second level is Raja, which is your passion, activity, and energy. And that ties into that karma yoga. And then there's the Sattva, which is goodness, light, and purity. So those are the 3 different levels. It then goes into helping you understand when you're probably still in tamas. And that is part of what this whole chapter is about, of selfless action. I think that one thing that really surprised me as I was reading through this is that there wasn't one way for anyone to get to self-actualization. Everybody was going to be on a different and unique path. And I think that was something that I also saw in Taoism, that everybody had a very unique path in getting to their self-actualization. In this life of theirs, your friend will take a totally different path than you will in order to come to your own internal peace. And in this book, they're fairly clear that there's not one way to get to your own self-actualization. But for Prince Arjuna, it appears that the way of action, karma yoga, is important, that he has to act in this world. He has to participate. And I think that also kind of surprised me, because we hear so much about Taoist monks or Buddhist monks that to be really realized and self-actualized, these people went and hid themselves away and meditated for years, and there they self-actualized. When I started reading the texts and everything, I was surprised to find out that that's one way. That's not the only way, and that's not the right way for everybody. These texts say the same thing, is that there's more than one way for you to self-actualize, and we're all going to take a slightly different path based on what it is that we need to do in this world. So what does selfless action mean? What does this karma yoga mean? What are we trying to accomplish here? And one of the things that we're trying to accomplish is understanding how to act selflessly. So instead of acting, how to act selflessly. There, I pronounced that better so you could understand me. Because one of the things that he said, which I thought this was such a beautiful statement, Krishna says that when we act selfishly, we imprison the world. His thoughts are act for the benefit of all. I've been talking about how the energetics of the world is changing from a very yang. We've reached our maximum yang, which is our maximum point of self-identification, our maximum point of selfishness, and we're turning to a yin cycle, and this yin cycle is going to last for thousands of years. So we're turning to a cycle that thinks we need to focus more on the profit of everybody. So again, when I read through this Bhagavad Gita, I thought, wow, that is like perfect for what's happening right now, to better understand where we're going, where I think we're going, and some of the thoughts that we need to start bringing in to help us get through this. I wanted to read sentences 15 through 20 to you because I just really thought these sentences were so incredibly powerful. So let me read that for you. Every selfless act, Arjuna, is born from Brahman, the eternal, infinite Godhead. Brahman is present in every act of service. All life turns on this law, O Arjuna. Those who violate it, indulging in the senses for their own pleasure and ignoring the needs of others, have wasted their life. But those who realize the self are always satisfied, having found the source of joy and fulfillment. They no longer seek happiness from the external world. They have nothing to gain or lose by any action. Neither people nor things can affect their security. Strive constantly to serve the welfare of the world. By devotion to selfless work, one attains the supreme goal of life. Do your work with the welfare of others always in mind. I really like that one because isn't that very true? In general today, there's a sense of insecurity. A lot of our happiness is wrapped up in a sense of materialism, a sense of gain, a sense of money. And without that, there's a sense of insecurity. And part of that is because of how we've created our society today. In our capitalistic society, you need money to live in a house. How many of our seniors are losing their house and finding themselves out on the street? I mean, that is just horrifying. And how many people right now are starting to lose their jobs? There's this insecurity that comes up when we find our financial livelihood is at risk. And yet, you know, that is one of the ways that we get pushed into this external world and really getting focused on the external world for our happiness. You know, when I'm working, what I find is that I am happiest when I am just working with people, for people. And I am unhappiest when I am working to try and get insurance to pay their claims. So I've found that I've started moving to a complete cash practice because there's no point in me fighting with insurance to pay their claims. When they do that, what they do is they grab me and they pull me into this financial insecurity. They pull me into focusing on the external world and needs that come from the external world instead of needs that come from myself and the happiness that comes from myself when I'm working with other people. And it's little things like that that I found that there's these ways that how the society is set up today that they can grab you and they try and pull you in to push you to think like we've thought for the last 200, 400 years. So for me, I started thinking, let me reread this and just believe in it and just go with it. Because yeah, it's really hard, right, to go with this because it can have significant implications for you, your livelihood, and what you're doing. Well, and that's something that you'll have to deal with. But I found that when I read this and I could resituate myself and reground myself, that I was able to keep on moving forward and just really believe that everything's going to be all right. And, there's that thing in Taoism, and it seems to be in this also, that as long as you're doing the right thing, and they all define what the right thing is, as long as you're doing that, everything's going to be all right. So for me, when I start getting stressed and I start getting worried and I start wondering, if, how is this all going to work out? I come back to one of these texts and I read it and I reread it. And by doing that, I'm able to find my balance again. And hopefully you are too. I 100% believe that everything will be all right. I guess the summation of what Krishna is saying in this one is that the ignorant work for their own profit. The wise work for the welfare of the world and without a thought for themselves. And then Krishna also says, perform all work carefully, guided by compassion. So I'm not saying that this is going to fix everything, but I'm saying that you might be where I am, where there's a lot of things going on in the world today, and it's very unsettling, and it's very confusing, and it's very frustrating. As long as you can find your way to find your equilibrium, then others around you are going to find that equilibrium too. And there's an energy that goes through people, and you're all going to start resonating with the same energy. And, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. So the more that you do this, the more you're going to actually create this world that you're looking for. Okay, that's just some thoughts. I just thought it was really interesting. I was just rereading the Bhagavad Gita, and that chapter 3 just hit me over and over and over again. So I hope there's something in that you find that can help you. And until next time, I will catch you on the other side.